You emerge from a tiny clear egg stuck to the underside of a leaf. The world around you is nothing but water, thick, jelly-like water that clings to everything. You can't see much yet, but you can feel movement everywhere. Other eggs are hatching too, their occupants wriggling free just like you. Some are faster, some are slower, but everyone has the same goal: get out and start swimming. Your body is strange and unfamiliar. You're basically a living comma, a bulbous head with a wiggly tail attached. No legs, no arms, just this tail that you flick back and forth to move through the water. It's not graceful, but it works. You're a tadpole now, and the shallow pool of rainwater collected in a bromeliad plant is your entire universe. The first thing you notice is hunger. It gnaws at you constantly, demanding attention. Around you, the water is filled with tiny particles, bits of decomposing leaves, microscopic organisms, bacteria. It's not exactly a five-star meal, but it's what you've got. You open your mouth and start filtering, sucking in water and trapping whatever nutrients you can find. Some of your siblings are doing the same thing, creating tiny currents as they feed. But this isn't a peaceful nursery. Competition starts immediately. The pool isn't big, maybe the size of a coffee cup, and there are dozens of you crammed inside. Every scrap of food matters, because there isn't enough to go around. You learn quickly that the fastest feeders get the most, and the slow ones get whatever's left. There's no sharing, no taking turns. You eat or you starve. Days pass, and you start noticing changes. Some of your siblings aren't moving as much anymore. They float near the surface, their tiny bodies still. The water around them starts to smell different, not fresh, but heavy and sweet. You don't understand what death means yet, but you know enough to stay away from the still ones. The nutrients from their bodies dissolve into the water, and you filter that too. Waste nothing, survive everything. Your tail grows stronger, more powerful. Swimming becomes easier, more controlled. You can dart away from threats now, though in this tiny pool, there aren't many places to hide. Sometimes a shadow passes overhead, maybe a bird, maybe an insect, and you freeze, pressing yourself against the bottom until the danger moves on. Your instincts are basic but sharp. Eat, hide, grow, repeat. After a few weeks, something incredible starts happening. You feel a tingling sensation near your back end, like something is trying to push through your skin. Then, one morning, you notice two tiny bumps that weren't there before. They grow larger each day, stretching and forming until you realize what they are. Legs. Your first legs, back ones, stubby and awkward, but undeniably real. The legs change everything. You're still mostly tadpole, but now you can do more than just swim. You can push off the bottom of the pool, launching yourself upward with surprising force. You can grip onto the curved walls of the bromeliad, holding yourself in place against the gentle current. It's clumsy at first. Your brain hasn't figured out how to coordinate swimming and kicking at the same time, but you adapt quickly. Then the front legs appear. This time, you watch it happen to one of your siblings first. The skin around their shoulders starts to bulge, then splits, and two perfect little arms emerge. Within days, it happens to you too. The sensation is strange, like your body is unzipping itself to reveal parts you never knew existed. 4 limbs now, though your tail is still doing most of the work. With arms and legs comes a new kind of hunger. The microscopic soup that sustained you before isn't enough anymore. Your body is changing, demanding different nutrients, more energy. You start noticing things you never paid attention to before. Tiny insects that fall into the water, fragments of larger organisms. When a small fly accidentally lands in your pool and starts struggling, you don't hesitate. You swim over and grab it. Your new hand's surprisingly good at holding onto prey. The fly is your first real meal, and it tastes nothing like the filtered particles you've been eating. It's rich, satisfying, filling in a way that makes you understand why your body has been changing. You're becoming something different, something that needs more than pond scum to survive. Your siblings notice too, and suddenly everyone is competing for the occasional insect that drops in. But the biggest change is still coming. Your tail, the appendage that has been your primary means of movement since birth, starts to feel different. It's not growing anymore. If anything, it seems to be shrinking. The realization hits you gradually. Your body is absorbing it, breaking it down, using it as fuel for the transformation that's taking over your entire system. One morning, you wake up and your tail is half the size it was yesterday. Panic sets in because swimming is suddenly much harder. You have to rely more on your legs, kicking frantically to stay afloat. Some of your siblings are going through the same thing, creating chaos in the small pool as everyone struggles to adapt to their changing bodies. Then your mouth starts feeling strange. The tiny circular opening you've used for filtering food begins to widen, stretch, reshape itself. Your throat changes too, and suddenly you can't breathe water the way you used to. Instead, you find yourself rising to the surface more often, gasping at the interface between water and air. Something deep in your brain is telling you that air, not water, is what you need now. The transformation accelerates. Your skin, once smooth and slimy, begins to change texture. It's still wet, but different, more porous, more sensitive. Colors start appearing where there were none before, faint at first, but growing stronger each day. Your siblings are changing too, but not all in the same way. Some are developing different patterns, different shades. Your eyes, which have been functional but basic, suddenly become incredibly sharp. You can see details you never noticed before, the intricate structure of the bromeliad leaves above you, the way light filters through the water, the subtle movements of tiny organisms. Everything is clearer, more vivid, more real, and then, one day, something extraordinary happens. You find yourself at the edge of the pool, where the water meets the curved wall of the bromeliad. Your legs, now strong and fully formed, push against the plant material. Instead of slipping back into the water, like always before, you stick. Your toes, you realize, have developed tiny pads that grip surfaces in a way that seems to defy gravity. Curiosity overcomes caution. You push harder, lifting more of your body out of the water. Your skin tingles as it meets the air directly, but it doesn't hurt. If anything, it feels right, natural, like this is what you were meant to do. You climb higher, your tail, now just a tiny stub, no longer dragging behind you. For the first time in your life, you're completely out of water. The world beyond the pool is massive, overwhelming, filled with shapes and colors and movements you never imagined. Leaves stretch in every direction, creating a green cathedral around you. The air carries scents that make your newly developed nostrils flare with recognition and confusion. You cling to the side of the bromeliad, no longer a tadpole, but not yet fully understanding what you've become. Your body is compact now, maybe the size of a thumbnail, with 4 distinct legs, bulging eyes that can move independently, and skin that's beginning to show hints of the brilliant blue that will define your adult life. The transformation isn't complete, but the hardest part is over. Below you, the pool that was your entire world for weeks now looks impossibly small. A few of your siblings are still in there, going through their own metamorphosis at different speeds. Some didn't make it. Their bodies float motionless, contributing nutrients to the ecosystem that briefly sustained all of you. But you're out now, breathing air, gripping surfaces, seeing the forest with new eyes. The hunger is different too. It's sharper, more focused. You're not looking for microscopic particles anymore. Your diet needs to change completely, and your body knows it. Your tongue, which you barely noticed before, has become a precision instrument. You can feel it coiled in your mouth, ready to strike with lightning speed at targets you're only beginning to understand how to hunt. This is your graduation from the aquatic world to something far more complex and dangerous. The rainforest around you is filled with predators that would love to make you their next meal, but it's also filled with prey that will keep you alive. Every leaf could hide an ant, every crevice could contain a spider, every surface could offer the tiny insects that will fuel your growth into adulthood. Your skin continues to change, the blue becoming more pronounced with each passing day. It's not just beautiful, it's a warning. Deep in your skin cells, poison is beginning to accumulate, toxins derived from the ants and other prey you'll soon learn to hunt. You don't know it yet, but you're becoming one of the most dangerous creatures in this forest, despite your tiny size. The bromeliad that served as your nursery is now your launching pad into a world where every decision matters, where survival depends on speed, stealth, and the growing arsenal of chemical weapons your body is producing. You're no longer competing with siblings for filtered pond scum. Now you're competing with the entire rainforest ecosystem, and the stakes are infinitely higher. But first, you need to learn how to hunt. Your transformation may be nearly complete, but your education as a poison dart frog is just beginning. The forest is waiting, filled with both opportunities and threats that will shape every day of your adult life. Your first real hunt happens by accident. You're clinging to the edge of a leaf, trying to figure out how this whole breathing air thing works, when something tiny moves in your peripheral vision. It's an ant, maybe half the size of your head, wandering across the leaf surface like it owns the place. Your body reacts before your brain catches up. Your tongue shoots out, a pink blur that you didn't even know you could control, and suddenly the ant is gone. You didn't see it happen, but you can feel something in your mouth, something that tastes completely different from anything you've ever experienced. You swallow without thinking, and immediately your body feels different. Not full, exactly, but satisfied in a way that the pond nutrients never achieved. This is what you were designed to eat. This is what your new body has been preparing for. The ant disappears into your stomach, and you sit there for a moment, stunned by how effortless it was. 1 second there was prey, the next second there wasn't. But effortless doesn't mean easy. Your next few attempts are disasters. You spot another ant and fire your tongue with confidence, only to watch it sail past the target and stick to a leaf instead. The ant doesn't even pause, just keeps walking like nothing happened. You feel ridiculous, hanging there with your tongue plastered to plant matter, trying to figure out how to retract it without falling off your perch. The learning curve is steep. Ants move unpredictably, stopping and starting, changing direction without warning. Your tongue is incredibly fast, but it's not magic. You have to lead your targets, predict where they'll be when your tongue arrives, account for distance and angle and timing. Miss by a millimeter, and your prey escapes while you're stuck reloading for the next shot. After days of practice, you start getting the hang of it. Your success rate improves from pathetic to merely terrible, then from terrible to occasionally successful. Each ant you catch teaches you something new about trajectory, about timing, about reading the subtle body language that telegraphs which direction your prey will move next. Your brain starts building a database of hunting knowledge, pattern recognition that will serve you for the rest of your life. But ants aren't the only things moving through your territory. The first time you see a spider, you freeze completely. It's maybe twice your size, with legs that span wider than your entire body. It moves with deliberate precision across its web, and every instinct you have screams danger. This is not prey. This is a predator, and you are very much on the menu. You learn to recognize the signs, the subtle vibrations in a leaf that means something big is approaching, the shadows that move wrong, the stillness that feels too complete. Survival isn't just about catching food anymore. It's about not becoming food for something else. Your new eyes are constantly scanning, your body always ready to leap to safety at the first sign of trouble. The poison in your skin is building up slowly, but you can feel it. Not as pain exactly, but as a kind of electrical awareness, like your entire body is becoming charged with something dangerous. The more ants you eat, the stronger it gets. You don't understand the chemistry, but you know that something in those tiny insects is transforming you into something else, something that other creatures will learn to fear. Your first real test comes when a bird lands on a branch above you. It's massive from your perspective, with a beak that could easily swallow you whole. You've been so focused on hunting tiny prey that you forgot you are tiny prey to everything else in this forest. The bird's head tilts as it spots you, and you see your death reflected in its dark eye. You do the only thing you can do, you run. Your legs launch you from leaf to leaf with surprising speed, your sticky toe pads gripping surfaces that should be impossible to navigate. Behind you, the bird gives chase, its wings creating wind currents that threaten to blow you off your path. A branch whips past your head as the beak snaps shut where you were a second before. You dive into a crevice between two leaves, pressing yourself as flat as possible against the plant material. Your heart hammers so hard, you're sure the bird can hear it. Above you, the predator searches, its head jerking from side to side as it tries to locate where you disappeared. You hold perfectly still, barely breathing, until finally the bird gives up and flies away. The encounter changes you. You realize that speed and stealth aren't enough. You need to be smarter, more careful, more aware of everything happening around you. The forest isn't just your hunting ground. It's a three-dimensional battlefield where death can come from any direction at any time. Your territory starts to take shape. It's not large, maybe the size of a small bush, but it's yours. You learn every leaf, every crevice, every hunting spot where ants are likely to appear. You establish escape routes, places where you can disappear when larger predators show up. You mark your presence with scent, though you're not entirely sure what that accomplishes, beyond making the space feel more like home. Other frogs appear occasionally, but you avoid them. Some are larger, clearly older, with skin so blue it almost hurts to look at. They move with confidence that you don't have yet, catching prey with casual efficiency that makes your own clumsy efforts look pathetic. When they glance in your direction, you make yourself scarce. You're not ready for whatever social dynamics exist between adult poison dart frogs. The rain comes frequently, turning your world into a symphony of water on leaves. At first, you hide from it, worried that too much moisture will somehow reverse your transformation and drag you back to your tadpole state. But you discover that rain actually makes hunting easier. Ants move differently when the surfaces are wet, slower, and more predictably. Your tongue works better in humid air, extends further, sticks more reliably to targets. You start to look forward to rainstorms, positioning yourself in prime hunting spots just before the water starts falling. Your success rate improves dramatically, and with it, your confidence. You're not just surviving anymore. You're starting to thrive. Each successful hunt makes you faster, more accurate, more tuned to the rhythms of the forest. Your skin continues to change, the blue deepening and spreading until it covers most of your back and sides. The poison is definitely stronger now. You can tell because the few times other small creatures have tried to grab you, they've released you immediately, shaking their heads and backing away like they've tasted something terrible. It's your first real defense, and it works better than hiding ever did. But with the poison comes responsibility. You're no longer just another small creature trying not to get eaten. You're becoming a force in this ecosystem, something that other animals need to learn to respect or avoid. The transformation from helpless tadpole to dangerous adult is accelerating, and you can feel yourself crossing thresholds that can never be uncrossed. Your hunting technique evolves beyond simple tongue flicking. You learn to position yourself strategically, to herd ants toward ambush points, to wait for the perfect moment when multiple targets are within range. Sometimes you can catch 2 or even 3 ants in quick succession, your tongue reloading and firing with mechanical precision. The forest around you is revealing its secrets. You understand now which plants harbor the best prey, which times of day offer the most hunting opportunities, which weather conditions make ants most active. Your world has expanded far beyond the tiny pool where you began, but it's still surprisingly small, a few square meters of rainforest that contain everything you need to survive. Every day brings new challenges, new predators to avoid, new prey to master, new skills to develop. Your body is still changing, still growing, still accumulating the toxins that will define your adult life. The brilliant blue skin that marks you as one of the most dangerous creatures in the forest is almost complete, but your education in survival is just beginning. You're no longer the helpless tadpole that emerged from an egg just weeks ago, but you're not yet the confident adult that will eventually claim a larger territory and face even greater challenges. You're something in between, dangerous enough to survive, but still learning what it means to be a poison dart frog in one of the most competitive ecosystems on Earth. You're 3 months old now, and your body has settled into its adult form. The brilliant blue skin that covers your back and sides isn't just for show. It's a warning label that screams danger to anything smart enough to read it. Your poison glands have been working overtime, concentrating toxins from every ant you've consumed into a chemical cocktail that could drop a bird 10 times your size. You don't know the science behind it, but you know the results. Nothing tries to eat you twice. Your territory has expanded beyond that initial bush. You now control a section of forest floor, roughly the size of a dinner table, which might not sound impressive until you consider that every square inch has been fought for. Other frogs have tried to move in, testing your boundaries, seeing if you're serious about defending what's yours. You've made it clear that you are, when a slightly smaller male wandered into your prime hunting spot last week. You didn't hesitate. You launched yourself at him, all 4 legs extended, landing squarely on his back. The fight was brief, but decisive. He tried to throw you off, twisting and jumping, but your grip held firm. Your skin pressed against his, and you could feel the poison transferring, burning into his system just enough to make your point. He went still beneath you, not dead, but definitely getting the message. When you finally released him, he didn't stick around to argue. He hopped away as fast as his legs could carry him, and you haven't seen him since. Territory disputes aren't the only social interactions you're learning to navigate. Sometimes, other frogs pass through your area without challenging you directly. There's a complex etiquette to these encounters, subtle body language that communicates intent, respect, or threat. When an older female crossed your boundary yesterday, you watched her carefully but didn't attack. She moved with the confidence of someone who could destroy you without breaking stride, her blue skin so vibrant it seemed to glow in the filtered sunlight. She paused near your favorite hunting perch, and for a moment you thought she might be claiming it. Instead, she simply sat there, perfectly still, waiting. Then her tongue flicked out so fast you almost missed it, snatching an ant you hadn't even noticed. She swallowed, gave you what might have been an approving nod, and continued on her way. The message was clear. She could hunt in your territory if she wanted to, but she was choosing not to make it an issue. You filed that interaction away under lessons in humility. Your hunting skills have reached a level that would have seemed impossible during those first clumsy weeks. You can now track multiple ants simultaneously, calculating trajectories and timing with the precision of a sniper. Your tongue has become a weapon of surgical accuracy, capable of adjusting mid-flight to compensate for last-second changes in your target's movement. On a good day, you might catch 30 ants before noon, each one adding to the poison reserves that keep you alive. But ants aren't your only prey anymore. You've discovered that the forest floor is crawling with tiny spiders, beetles, and other insects that provide variety to your diet. Each species requires different hunting strategies. Spiders are paranoid and quick, requiring perfect stealth to approach. Beetles are heavily armored, meaning you need to hit them in exactly the right spot to penetrate their defenses. Flying insects demand split-second timing and incredible accuracy. The most challenging prey are the small flies that hover just out of range, as if they know exactly how far your tongue can extend. They'll dance in the air inches from your face, taunting you with their proximity. You've learned to be patient with these, waiting for them to make the mistake of landing or flying too low. When they do, your strike needs to be perfect, because you won't get a second chance. Your success rate has attracted attention you don't want. Last week, a snake slithered into your territory. Not a huge one, but big enough to swallow you whole. You spotted it early, coiled beneath a fallen log about 3 feet from your position. For a moment, neither of you moved. The snake's tongue flicked out, tasting the air, trying to determine if you were worth the effort. You held perfectly still, hoping your poison reputation had spread far enough to make it think twice. The standoff lasted maybe 5 minutes, though it felt like hours. Every muscle in your body was coiled and ready to spring, but you knew that running would trigger its hunting instinct. Instead, you did something that surprised even you. You started calling. Not the complex songs you'll develop later in life, but a simple, rhythmic chirp that carried a clear message. I am here, I am dangerous, and I am not afraid of you. The snake's head tilted, considering. Then slowly, it began to withdraw, not fleeing exactly, but choosing to hunt elsewhere. You kept calling until it disappeared completely, then sat in stunned silence. You just faced down a predator, many times your size, using nothing but attitude and reputation. It was a moment that changed how you saw yourself in the forest hierarchy. Rain season arrives with a vengeance, turning your territory into a temporary aquatic environment. At first, you're concerned that the water will somehow interfere with your hunting or make you more vulnerable to predators. Instead, you discover that heavy rain creates opportunities you never knew existed. The forest floor becomes a network of tiny streams and puddles, each one teeming with insects that have been washed out of their hiding places. You learn to hunt in the rain, your tongue working just as effectively in the humid air. Water dripping from leaves creates a constant percussion that masks your movements, allowing you to get closer to prey than ever before. Your poison-bright skin, which normally makes you visible to predators, blends surprisingly well with the rain-soaked environment. Wet leaves reflect and scatter light in ways that break up your outline. But rain also brings new dangers. The water carries scents further, making it easier for predators to track you. Surfaces become slippery, making escape routes less reliable, and the sound of falling water can mask the approach of threats until they're almost on top of you. You adapt by becoming even more vigilant, your eyes constantly scanning for movement that doesn't match the rhythm of rainfall. During one particularly heavy storm, you discover something remarkable about your species. Another frog, one you've never seen before, appears at the edge of your territory. But instead of challenging you for space, it seems to be seeking shelter. You watch as it positions itself under the same leaf you're using for cover, close enough that you could reach out and touch it. Under normal circumstances, this would trigger a territorial response. But something about the storm, about the shared vulnerability, creates a temporary truce. You both sit there, two small blue specks in the vast green cathedral of the rainforest, waiting for the weather to pass. Neither of you hunts, neither of you moves to claim space. You simply coexist, united by the simple need to stay dry and safe. When the rain stops, the other frog moves on without acknowledgement, as if the encounter never happened. But you remember it, filing it away as evidence that your species is capable of more complex social behavior than simple aggression and avoidance. There are situations where cooperation, even temporary and unspoken, serves everyone's interests. Your poison levels have reached full adult strength now. You know this because a bird tried to grab you 2 days ago, actually made contact, its beak closing around your midsection, and released you so fast it was almost comical. The bird landed hard, shaking its head violently, opening and closing its beak as if trying to get rid of a terrible taste. You watched from your perch as it stumbled around for several minutes before finally flying away, probably to find water to wash out its mouth. The encounter was simultaneously terrifying and empowering. Terrifying because for a split second you thought you were dead. Empowering because you discovered that your reputation is backed up by reality. Your skin isn't just colorful, it's genuinely dangerous to anything that tries to eat you. This knowledge changes how you move through the forest, adding a swagger to your step that wasn't there before. You start taking risks you wouldn't have considered as a juvenile. You hunt in more exposed locations, venture further from cover, challenge larger competitors for prime territory. Your poison gives you confidence, but it also makes you a target for creatures smart enough to avoid direct contact. You notice more birds watching you from a distance, their heads tilted in that calculating way that means they're trying to figure out if there's a safe way to make you their next meal. The forest around you has become as familiar as your own body. You know which leaves will support your weight, which branches offer the best hunting perches, which crevices provide the most secure hiding spots. You've memorized the daily routines of every creature in your territory. When the ants emerge from their nest, where the spiders build their webs, which times of day offer the most hunting opportunities. But familiarity breeds a different kind of danger. You start getting comfortable, maybe a little careless. You don't scan for threats as carefully as you used to. You assume that your poison will protect you from anything stupid enough to try. This overconfidence nearly gets you killed when a snake you didn't notice strikes from beneath a pile of dead leaves. You dodge at the last second, the snake's fangs passing so close to your head that you feel the wind they create. Your counterattack is immediate and vicious. You launch yourself onto the snake's head, pressing your most poisonous skin directly against its eyes and mouth. The snake thrashes wildly, trying to throw you off, but you hold on with grim determination. After what feels like an eternity, it goes limp beneath you. You don't stick around to see if it's dead or just unconscious. You leap away and retreat to the highest perch you can find, your heart hammering so hard it's difficult to breathe. The encounter serves as a harsh reminder that poison isn't a magic shield. It only works if you survive long enough for it to take effect. Speed, awareness, and good judgment are still your primary defenses. Your hunting territory continues to expand as your confidence returns. You now control an area roughly the size of a small room, with multiple prime hunting spots and several backup territories you can retreat to if necessary. Other frogs have learned to respect your boundaries, giving you a wide berth when they pass through. You've established yourself as a force to be reckoned with in this tiny sections of rainforest. But success brings new challenges. Larger predators have started taking notice of you, drawn by your increasingly bold behavior and growing reputation. You spot them occasionally, shapes moving through the canopy above, shadows that pause just a little too long when they pass over your territory. They're studying you, learning your patterns, waiting for the right opportunity. The pressure is constant now, a background tension that never quite goes away. Every hunt could be your last if you're not careful. Every moment of relaxation could be the opening a predator needs. You find yourself sleeping lighter, waking at the slightest sound, constantly checking escape routes that you've memorized but never want to use. Yet despite the danger, or perhaps because of it, you've never felt more alive. Your senses are razor sharp, your reflexes lightning fast, your confidence tempered by hard-won wisdom. You're no longer the confused tadpole that struggled to catch its first ant, or the clumsy juvenile that missed more shots than it made. You're a fully realized poison dart frog, dangerous and competent and ready for whatever challenges lie ahead. The forest stretches endlessly around you, filled with opportunities and threats in equal measure. Your territory is secure for now. Your poison reserves are at full strength, and your hunting skills have reached their peak. But you can sense that something is changing, some new phase of life approaching that will demand different skills and bring different rewards. You don't know it yet, but you're about to discover what it means to be not just a successful predator, but a member of a species whose survival depends on more than individual strength. The next chapter of your life will introduce complexities you can't imagine, challenges that can't be solved with speed and poison alone. You're 6 months old when you hear it for the first time, a sound that cuts through the constant white noise of the rainforest like nothing you've ever experienced. It's coming from somewhere to your left, maybe 20 feet away, a rhythmic series of chirps that seem to pulse with intention. Your entire body goes still. Every instinct you've developed screams that this is important, though you don't understand why. The sound comes again, slightly different this time, more complex. It's not the simple warning call you used to scare off that snake weeks ago. This is something else entirely, a pattern of notes that rises and falls with musical precision. Your throat twitches involuntarily, as if your body wants to respond before your brain figures out what's happening. Then you see him, another poison dart frog, but different from any you've encountered before. He's positioned on a broad leaf about 15 feet away, his throat inflated into a translucent bubble that pulses with each note he produces. His skin is the deepest blue you've ever seen, so saturated it looks almost black in the filtered light. This isn't just another competitor wandering through your territory. This is something new. He spots you watching and pauses mid-call. For a moment, neither of you moves. Then he does something unexpected. He shifts position slightly, angling his body toward you, and begins calling again. But this time, the pattern is different, more elaborate, with trills and flourishes that make your previous attempts at vocalization sound like amateur hour. Your throat starts vibrating on its own, producing sounds you didn't know you could make. They're rough, unpolished, nothing like his smooth performance, but they're definitely intentional. He stops calling and tilts his head, listening. When you finish your clumsy attempt, he responds immediately with a series of notes that somehow sound approving. This goes on for several minutes, him calling, you attempting to answer, him adjusting his pattern based on your response. It's like learning a language you never knew existed, one that speaks directly to something deep in your nervous system. Each exchange teaches you something new about rhythm, pitch, and timing. Your throat muscles are already getting stronger, more flexible, but you're not the only one listening. From somewhere behind you comes another voice, this one higher pitched but equally complex. You turn to see a female frog perched on a cluster of leaves, her skin a lighter blue with intricate black patterns that seem to shift in the dappled sunlight. She's not calling to you. Her attention is focused entirely on the male who started this whole conversation. The male's response is immediate and dramatic. His calls become more frequent, more elaborate, with new elements you haven't heard before. He starts moving as he sings, positioning himself to show off the brilliant patches of color on his legs and belly. It's a performance, you realize, and you're watching it unfold with growing fascination. The female remains still, but you can tell she's evaluating every note, every movement. This isn't casual communication. It's competition, courtship, and territorial display all rolled into one. And somehow, without meaning to, you've become part of it. Your own calling attempts grow more confident as the morning progresses. The male occasionally acknowledges your efforts with brief responses, but his primary focus remains on the female. She hasn't moved from her perch, but her posture has changed subtly. Where before she seemed merely curious, now she appears genuinely interested. Then something shifts in the dynamic. The male's calls take on a new urgency, and he begins moving toward the female's position. But he doesn't approach directly. Instead, he follows a complex path that takes him closer in stages, pausing frequently to call and wait for her response. It's like watching an elaborate dance where only one partner is moving. You find yourself following along, not approaching the female but paralleling the male's movements from a respectful distance. Your calls are becoming more sophisticated by the hour, incorporating elements you've picked up from listening to his performance. You're not trying to compete. You instinctively understand that you're not ready for that level of challenge, but you're learning. The female finally moves. She hops down from her high perch to a lower leaf, closer to where the male has positioned himself. The change in her location triggers a frenzy of calling from him, his throat working overtime to produce sounds that seem to fill the entire forest. You can feel the vibrations through the leaves beneath your feet, but you're not the only one who's been listening. From various directions come answering calls, other males who've been drawn by the commotion. Within minutes, your quiet morning has turned into a cacophony of competing voices, each trying to outdo the others in volume and complexity. The forest around you has become an amphitheater, and you're witnessing something that goes far beyond simple territorial disputes. One of the newcomers is significantly larger than the original male, with skin so dark it's almost purple. His calls are deeper, more resonant, carrying further through the forest. He positions himself between the original male and the female, clearly intending to cut off the courtship that's been developing. The confrontation that follows is unlike anything you've seen. It's not the quick, decisive territorial fight you experienced months ago. This is prolonged, ritualized, more about display than actual combat. Both males call simultaneously, creating a wall of sound that makes it impossible to hear anything else. They hop and posture, showing off their colors, their throat sacs, their vocal abilities. The female watches it all with what seems like detached interest. She's the prize they're competing for, but she's also the judge. Her choice will determine which male gets to continue his genetic line and which one retreats to try again another day. The power dynamic is complex in ways you're only beginning to understand. Your own calling has become more tentative as the competition intensifies. These are adults operating at a level you can't match, engaged in behaviors that require skills you haven't developed yet. But you keep listening, keep learning, filing away every detail for future reference. The standoff continues for over an hour. Just when it seems like it might escalate to actual violence, the female makes her choice. She hops down from her perch and moves toward the original male, the one who started calling first. The larger intruder calls frantically, trying to change her mind, but she ignores him completely. What happens next is brief but unmistakable. The female approaches the chosen male until they're almost touching, then positions herself so he can climb onto her back. The mating itself lasts only seconds, but the implications are enormous. You're watching the continuation of your species, the passing of genetic information that will determine the characteristics of the next generation. The rejected male gives up calling and disappears into the forest. The successful pair remains together for several more minutes, the male still perched on the female's back, both of them perfectly still. Then, as suddenly as it began, the encounter is over. The male hops away, his territorial calls resuming their normal pattern. The female moves off in a different direction, her purpose apparently accomplished. You're left alone, with a head full of new information and a throat that aches from hours of unaccustomed use. The forest seems quieter now, almost anticlimactic after the morning's drama. But you know something fundamental has changed. You've been introduced to an aspect of frog life that goes far beyond hunting and survival. There are social complexities here that you're only beginning to grasp. Over the following days, you practice the calling techniques you observed. Your voice grows stronger, more controlled, capable of producing the complex patterns that seemed impossible just a week ago. You're not ready to compete with fully mature males, but you're building the skills you'll need when that time comes. Other encounters follow, each teaching you something new about the social dynamics of your species. You learn that calls have multiple functions, not just courtship, but territorial announcements, warnings, and even what seems like casual conversation between neighbors. The forest is full of voices once you learn to listen for them, a constant communication network that connects every frog in the area. Your own territory takes on new significance as your calling abilities develop. It's not just hunting ground anymore. It's a stage, a platform from which you can project your voice and establish your presence in the community. The best calling spots become as important as the best hunting perches, and you spend considerable time identifying locations that offer optimal acoustics, but calling also makes you more visible to predators. Your voice carries much further than your previous simple chirps, advertising your location to anything that might want to eat a small blue frog. You learn to call from concealed positions, ready to dive for cover at the first sign of danger. The balance between communication and survival becomes a constant consideration. One morning, You're practicing a particularly complex trill when movement catches your eye. It's the female from that first courtship encounter, moving through your territory with purposeful determination. She's carrying something, a cluster of what looks like tiny black pearls stuck to her back. She heads straight for a bromeliad plant near the center of your territory, one you've used occasionally for hunting but never paid much attention to otherwise. You watch as she climbs up to the water-filled cup formed by the plant's leaves and carefully deposits her cargo into the shallow pool. Eggs. She's laying eggs in your territory. The realization hits you like a physical blow. This isn't random. She chose your territory specifically, evaluating it for its suitability as a nursery site. Your success as a hunter, your ability to defend your boundaries, your position in the forest's social hierarchy, all of it has been noticed and approved by a mature female looking for the best possible site to raise her offspring. She finishes depositing the eggs and pauses, looking directly at you. There's something in her posture that seems almost expectant, as if she's waiting for some kind of response. You don't know what that response should be, but you feel the weight of responsibility settling around you like a heavy cloak. The eggs are now part of your territory, and by extension, your responsibility. You don't understand the full implications yet, but you know that everything has changed. You're no longer just a successful predator defending hunting grounds. You're now the guardian of the next generation, responsible for creating an environment where tadpoles can develop safely. The female moves on, but her presence lingers. You find yourself checking on the bromeliad regularly, watching for any signs of development in the tiny black spheres floating in the plant's natural cup. They don't look like much, but you know that each one represents a potential future member of your species. Days pass, and the eggs begin to show signs of change. They grow slightly larger, and you can see movement inside them, tiny forms shifting and developing. Your protective instincts, dormant until now, kick into overdrive. You start patrolling more aggressively, chasing away any creature that ventures too close to the bromeliad. A week later, they hatch. Tiny tadpoles emerge from the eggs, instantly active and hungry. They're impossibly small, barely visible unless you know exactly where to look, but they're unmistakably alive and growing. You watch them with fascination and growing anxiety, remembering your own vulnerable tadpole stage and the countless dangers that threatened your survival. But these tadpoles have something you didn't, a guardian. You don't know it yet, but you're about to discover that parental care in your species goes far beyond simply providing a safe nursery site. The female who laid these eggs will return, and when she does, she'll demonstrate behaviors that will revolutionize your understanding of what it means to be a poison dart frog. Your transformation from solitary hunter to community member is accelerating. The forest around you is revealing layers of complexity you never suspected, social structures and behavioral patterns that extend far beyond individual survival. You're becoming part of something larger, a network of relationships and responsibilities that will define the rest of your adult life. The calling continues each morning, now with new meaning. You're not just practicing anymore. You're participating in a community-wide communication system that coordinates breeding activities, territorial boundaries, and resource allocation. Your voice is becoming part of the forest's daily rhythm, as essential and reliable as the sunrise itself. But with greater social integration comes greater vulnerability. You're no longer an anonymous predator that other creatures can safely ignore. Your regular calling schedule makes you predictable. Your territorial boundaries are known to every frog in the area, and your success in attracting egg-laying females has marked you as a high-value target for competitors. The pressure is building toward confrontations you can't avoid, challenges that will test everything you've learned about survival, territory defense, and social dynamics. Your poison may protect you from most predators, but it won't help against other frogs who are just as toxic as you are. The tadpoles in your bromeliad continue to grow, their presence a constant reminder that your actions now affect more than just your own survival. Every decision you make, every risk you take, every territorial dispute you engage in has implications for the developing young under your protection. You don't know it yet, but you're approaching the most dangerous and rewarding phase of your life as a poison dart frog. The skills that got you this far, hunting, territory defense, predator avoidance, are about to be tested in ways that will push you to your absolute limits. Success will establish you as a dominant force in your forest community. Failure could mean the end of everything you've worked to build. The morning calls are getting louder, more competitive, as the breeding season reaches its peak. Every day brings new challenges, new competitors, new opportunities to prove your worth as both a survivor and a genetic contributor to the next generation. Your blue skin gleams in the filtered sunlight, a warning to predators and a promise to potential mates that you represent the best your species has to offer. But promises must be kept, warnings must be backed up with action, and reputation must be defended against all challengers. The forest is watching, waiting to see if you're truly ready for the responsibilities of adult life, or if you're just another promising juvenile who couldn't make the transition to breeding success. Your throat inflates as you prepare for your morning call, but this time it feels different. This time, you're not just practicing or exploring your vocal range. This time, you're announcing to the entire forest that you're ready for whatever comes next, that you've claimed your place in the complex social hierarchy of poison dart frog society, and that you intend to hold that place against all comers. The sound that emerges is clear, strong, and unmistakably confident. It carries through the forest canopy, bouncing off leaves and tree trunks, reaching every frog within a quarter-mile radius. It's a declaration of intent, a challenge to competitors, and an invitation to potential mates, all rolled into one perfectly executed vocal performance. The responses come immediately. Calls from established males acknowledging your presence, tentative inquiries from younger frogs still learning the social rules, and somewhere in the distance, the higher-pitched notes that indicate female interest. The conversation you started months ago as a clumsy beginner has evolved into sophisticated communication that will shape every aspect of your future. But communication is just the beginning. The real tests are still ahead, challenges that will require every skill you've developed, and some you haven't learned yet. The forest around you is full of opportunities and dangers in equal measure, and your success in navigating them will determine not just your own survival, but the fate of the next generation developing under your protection. The response comes from your right, another male, older and larger, with skin so deep blue it's almost black. His call is a direct challenge, complex patterns that seem designed to overshadow your own announcement. He's not just acknowledging your presence, he's questioning your right to be here, to claim territory, to participate in the breeding hierarchy at all. You respond without hesitation, your throat working to produce the most sophisticated call you can manage. It's not as polished as his, but it carries something his lacks, the raw determination of someone who's fought for every inch of territory they control. The exchange continues, back and forth, each call more elaborate than the last. Other voices join the conversation. Males from adjoining territories add their own calls, creating a web of acoustic boundaries that define the social structure of this section of forest. You're no longer an outsider listening in. You're part of the network, your voice carrying equal weight with frogs who've been doing this for years. But the older male isn't finished with you. His calls take on a new intensity, and you see him moving through the canopy in your direction. This isn't going to remain a vocal competition. He's coming to test your territorial claims in person, and you know that everything you've built over the past months is about to be put to the ultimate test. You position yourself on your highest perch, the one that offers the best acoustics and the clearest view of approaching threats. Your skin gleams with poison, so concentrated it could drop a bird in seconds. But you know that won't help against another frog with equally toxic defenses. This fight will be won through speed, aggression, and sheer determination. He appears at the edge of your territory, massive compared to your still developing frame. His movements are deliberate, calculated, those of a frog who's won these confrontations before. He pauses just inside your boundary and unleashes a call so loud and complex, it seems to make the leaves vibrate around you. Your response is immediate and defiant. You launch yourself from your perch, not toward him, but to an even more prominent position that puts you above his current location. From there, you call with everything you have, pouring months of practice and growing confidence into a vocal display that announces your refusal to be intimidated. The psychological warfare continues for several minutes. He advances slightly. You counter by moving to maintain your height advantage. He calls. You respond with patterns that mirror and challenge his own. Neither of you is backing down, and the tension builds until something has to give. The physical confrontation begins when he makes his first serious move toward the bromeliad containing your tadpoles. That crosses a line you didn't even know existed until this moment. Your protective instincts explode into action, launching you through the air in a trajectory that will put you directly on top of him. You land hard, all four legs spread wide to maximize your grip. He tries to throw you off immediately, his body bucking and twisting with surprising violence. Your claws dig into his skin, holding on despite his efforts to dislodge you. This is nothing like your previous territorial disputes. This is warfare, pure and simple. He manages to flip over, trying to crush you against the ground, but you're ready for the move. You release your grip and leap clear, landing in a defensive crouch, just out of his reach. He recovers quickly, faster than you expected, and suddenly you're facing each other on level ground with nowhere to retreat. The fight that follows is brutal and exhausting. He has size and experience, but you have desperation and the advantage of defending familiar territory. You use every trick you've learned, every escape route you've memorized, every tactical advantage your home ground provides. When he charges, you dodge at the last second, letting his momentum carry him past you. When he tries to corner you, you leap to higher ground and force him to follow. But he's learning your patterns, adapting to your strategies. His attacks become more precise, more difficult to avoid. A swipe of his powerful hind leg catches you across the ribs, sending you tumbling into a cluster of leaves. You recover quickly, but you can feel the impact, the reminder that he's capable of ending this fight with a single, well-placed blow. The battle rages across your entire territory, destroying carefully maintained hunting perches and revealing hiding spots you'd hope to keep secret. Other frogs watch from the safety of their own boundaries, their calls creating a soundtrack of excitement and tension. This is entertainment for them, but for you, it's everything. You start to tire first. Your smaller size means less endurance, and the constant movement required to avoid his attacks is draining your energy reserves. He seems to sense your weakness, pressing his advantage, forcing you into increasingly desperate defensive maneuvers. Then you remember something from your earliest days as a juvenile, the lesson about using your opponent's strength against them. When he charges again, instead of dodging, you drop low and roll directly under him. Your momentum carries you between his legs, and you spring upward with every ounce of strength you have left. The impact lifts him off the ground, his balance completely destroyed. He crashes down hard, momentarily stunned by the unexpected reversal. You don't waste the opportunity. You leap onto his back, pressing your most poisonous skin directly against the vulnerable spot behind his head. For a moment, neither of you moves. Your poison seeps into his system through the contact points, not enough to cause serious harm, but definitely enough to make him reconsider his options. He could continue fighting, but now he knows that every second of contact with you is weakening him further. The surrender, when it comes, is subtle. His body goes slack beneath you, not from poison, but from acceptance. He's made his point, tested your defenses, evaluated your capabilities, measured your determination. You've made yours, proven that you won't give up your territory without a fight, demonstrated that you're willing to use every advantage at your disposal. You release him and back away slowly, ready to resume fighting if necessary. But he's already moving toward the boundary of your territory, his posture making it clear that the challenge is over. He pauses at the edge of your domain and gives one final call, not threatening this time, but acknowledging. You've earned his respect, and more importantly, you've earned your place in the community. The aftermath is surprisingly anticlimactic. Other frogs resume their normal calling patterns, the excitement of the fight already fading into background noise. You check on your bromeliad and find the tadpoles unharmed, still developing normally despite the chaos that erupted around them. Your territory remains intact, your boundaries respected. But you know this won't be the last challenge. Word of your successful defense will spread through the acoustic network, attracting new competitors who want to test themselves against the frog who defeated an established male. Your victory has elevated your status, but it's also painted a target on your back. Over the following days, you work to repair the damage from the fight. Hunting perches need to be reestablished, escape routes need to be cleared, territorial markers need to be refreshed. The physical maintenance is exhausting, but it's nothing compared to the psychological pressure of knowing that every call you make is being evaluated by potential challengers. Your morning calls take on new complexity as your confidence grows. You incorporate elements you learned from the fight, vocal patterns that communicate not just territorial ownership, but the willingness to defend it violently if necessary. Other frogs respond with increased respect, their own calls acknowledging your elevated status. But status brings responsibility. Younger frogs start appearing at the edges of your territory, not challenging, but observing. They're learning from your example, studying your techniques, preparing for their own eventual attempts at territorial establishment. You find yourself in the strange position of being a role model, an example of successful transition from juvenile to breeding adult. The female who deposited eggs in your bromeliad returns, but this time she's not alone. She brings food, tiny ants and other insects that she deposits directly into the water where her tadpoles are developing. You watch in fascination as the larvae rush to consume the offerings, their growth visibly accelerating with each feeding. This behavior is completely new to you. During your own tadpole stage, you survived on filtered nutrients and whatever organic matter happen to fall into your nursery pool. These tadpoles are receiving active parental care, deliberate feeding that gives them advantages you never had. The implications are staggering. The female makes multiple trips, each time bringing fresh food for her developing offspring. She doesn't acknowledge your presence directly, but she tolerates your observation without hostility. You're learning about aspects of reproduction that go far beyond the brief mating encounter you witnessed months ago. But her feeding trips don't go unnoticed by other creatures in the forest. Predators have started showing increased interest in your territory, drawn by the regular activity around the bromeliad. You find yourself defending not just your own interests, but the female's investment in the next generation. A spider attempts to build a web near the nursery site. You destroy it immediately, your territorial instincts now extending to anything that might threaten the developing tadpoles. When a small lizard ventures too close to the bromeliad, you chase it off with aggressive calling and threat displays. Your role has evolved from simple territory holder to active protector. The pressure intensifies when you spot a snake moving through the upper canopy, its path taking it directly over the bromeliad. This isn't the relatively small snake you encountered months ago. This is a full-sized predator capable of swallowing multiple frogs without effort. Your poison won't help if it decides you're worth the risk. You do the only thing you can. You start calling. Not the complex territorial songs you've been perfecting, but the simple, urgent alarm calls that every creature in the forest understands. Within seconds, other frogs join in, creating a wall of sound that broadcasts danger throughout the immediate area. The snake pauses, its head turning toward the source of the commotion. For a moment, you think it might investigate, but the collective noise from multiple frogs seems to convince it that this area is more trouble than it's worth. It changes direction, slithering away toward quieter hunting grounds. The incident reinforces your understanding of how community dynamics work. Individual poison might protect you from direct predation, but group cooperation is what keeps the forest's apex predators at bay. Your success isn't just about personal survival anymore. It's about contributing to the collective security that allows your entire species to thrive. Your calling schedule becomes more regular, more predictable. Each morning begins with territorial announcements that establish your boundaries and status. Midday brings shorter communications with neighboring frogs, updates on local conditions and potential threats. Evening calls are often social, casual conversations that maintain community bonds without the intensity of territorial or mating displays. But routine breeds complacency, and complacency attracts trouble. You're so focused on your established patterns that you almost miss the approach of something that represents a completely different category of threat. It's not another frog or a familiar predator. It's something you've never encountered before, moving through your territory with confidence that suggests it has every right to be there. The creature that emerges from behind a cluster of leaves is roughly your size but completely different in every other way. Its skin is brown and rough rather than smooth and colorful. It moves with deliberate precision rather than the quick, nervous energy typical of frogs. Most unsettling of all, it shows no reaction to your presence, no acknowledgement that you might be dangerous. You call sharply, the warning tone that usually sends smaller creatures fleeing. The intruder pauses, tilts its head slightly, then continues moving directly toward your bromeliad. This is unprecedented. Nothing ignores poison dart frog warnings. Nothing approaches nursery sites defended by toxic adults. Nothing acts like your reputation means absolutely nothing. Your defensive options are limited. Physical confrontation, is risky because you don't know what this creature is capable of, and your usual intimidation tactics clearly aren't working. But retreat isn't an option either, not with tadpoles depending on your protection. You decide on a middle course, shadowing the intruder while maintaining a safe distance. If it threatens the nursery directly, you'll attack regardless of the risk. If it's just passing through, you'll let it go and hope it doesn't return. Your poison reserves are at full strength, your reflexes are sharp, and your territorial instincts are fully engaged. The creature reaches the bromeliad and stops. For a terrifying moment, you think it's going to investigate the tadpoles, but instead it does something completely unexpected. It drinks, just drinks from the water collected in the plant's natural cup, careful not to disturb the developing larvae swimming below the surface. When it finishes drinking, it moves on without giving you or the nursery site another glance. You're left staring after it in complete confusion, your understanding of forest hierarchies suddenly called into question. Some creatures, apparently, operate by completely different rules than the ones you've learned to navigate. The encounter leaves you unsettled in ways you can't quite define. Your success as a territorial defender has been based on the assumption that all creatures recognize and respect the threat you represent. The discovery that some animals are completely indifferent to your presence forces you to reconsider fundamental assumptions about your place in the ecosystem. But there's no time for philosophical contemplation. The tadpoles in your bromeliad are growing rapidly, their development accelerated by the regular feeding from their mother. They're approaching the size where they'll begin their own metamorphosis, transforming from aquatic larvae into terrestrial juveniles. Your responsibility as their guardian is entering a new phase. The female's visits become more frequent as her offspring near maturity. She brings not just food now, but seems to be evaluating the nursery site for its suitability as a transformation location. Her inspections are thorough, examining water quality, security, and accessibility with the eye of someone who's done this before. You watch her work with growing admiration. Her efficiency is remarkable. Every movement serves a purpose, every decision based on careful evaluation of conditions and risks. She's not just feeding her young, she's managing their entire developmental environment with scientific precision. Your own role in this process remains unclear. You're obviously expected to maintain security and territorial integrity, but beyond that, your responsibilities are undefined. The female tolerates your presence, but doesn't actively include you in her caretaking activities. You're a guardian, not a parent, and the distinction matters in ways you're still learning to understand. The first tadpole begins its transformation on a rainy morning when the air is thick with moisture and the forest floor is soft with accumulated water. You watch in fascination as it repeats the same developmental process you experienced months ago. Legs emerging, tail shrinking, body reshaping itself for terrestrial life. But this time, you're the observer rather than the participant. You remember the confusion and vulnerability of your own metamorphosis, the desperate hunger and constant threat of predation. These tadpoles have advantages you didn't: active parental care, secure territory, and a guardian who understands the challenges they're about to face. The transformation process takes several days, during which your vigilance reaches almost paranoid levels. Metamorphosing tadpoles are incredibly vulnerable, unable to flee effectively in water or on land. Every shadow becomes a potential threat, every sound a possible approach of predators drawn by the scent of helpless prey. The female increases her feeding efforts during this critical period, providing extra nutrition to fuel the energy-intensive transformation process. Her dedication is absolute. She makes feeding trips every few hours, day and night, ensuring that her offspring have every possible advantage during their most vulnerable stage. When the first juvenile finally emerges fully transformed, it's barely the size of your smallest toe. Its skin shows the faint blue coloration that will intensify over the coming months, but for now it looks more gray than anything else. It clings to the side of the bromeliad with obvious uncertainty, its new legs still learning to coordinate movement. You feel an unexpected surge of protective instinct toward the tiny creature. This isn't your offspring, but it developed under your protection, in your territory, with your security making its transformation possible. The connection you feel is complex, part territorial pride, part species loyalty, part something deeper that you don't have words for. The juvenile's first hunt is a disaster. It spots a tiny ant, smaller than any prey you'd bother with, and attempts to catch it with techniques that are clearly based on instinct rather than experience. Its tongue shoots out in the right direction but falls short of the target. The ant continues on its way, completely unaware of how close it came to being someone's first meal. You watch several more failed attempts before something unexpected happens. You find yourself moving closer, positioning yourself where the juvenile can observe your own hunting techniques. You spot a small fly and demonstrate the patient approach, the careful positioning, the precise timing required for a successful strike. The juvenile watches intently as your tongue darts out and returns with prey. You don't offer to share the catch. That would violate natural learning processes, but you've provided a demonstration of proper technique. Whether the young frog can translate observation into successful practice remains to be seen. Over the following days, more tadpoles complete their transformation. Your bromeliad becomes a nursery school for juvenile poison dart frogs, each one learning to navigate the challenges of terrestrial life through trial and error. The mortality rate is significant. Not all of them adapt quickly enough to survive their first week out of water, but those that do survive show rapid improvement. Their hunting success rates increase daily. Their movements become more coordinated. Their coloration begins to show the distinctive patterns that will mark them as members of your species. They're not your offspring, but watching them develop gives you insights into the broader purposes that drive individual survival. The female's role gradually diminishes as her young become more independent. Her feeding visits become less frequent, then stop altogether. The juveniles are now responsible for finding their own food, defending themselves from predators, and learning the complex social rules that govern adult frog society. Some of them remain in your territory, occupying marginal areas that don't conflict with your prime hunting spots. Others venture out into the broader forest, seeking their own territories and facing the same challenges you overcame months ago. A few don't survive their first encounters with the larger world, falling victim to predators or simply failing to adapt quickly enough. But enough survive to justify the enormous investment of time and energy that went into their development. The forest's poison dart frog population has been augmented by a new generation, each carrying genetic material that represents millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Your role as guardian contributed to that success, making you part of something larger than individual survival. Your territorial calls take on new meaning as the breeding season reaches its peak. You're no longer just announcing your presence. You're advertising your success as a territory holder, your proven ability to provide secure nursery sites for developing young. The calls from other males carry similar messages, creating a competitive market for reproductive opportunities. But competition brings danger. Your success has attracted attention from males who want what you have: prime territory, proven nursery sites, elevated status in the community hierarchy. The challenges are coming more frequently now, each one testing your ability to defend what you've built. The forest around you pulses with the energy of reproduction and competition. Every dawn brings new voices joining the acoustic landscape. Every evening sees territorial boundaries tested and redefined. You're no longer learning the rules of adult frog society. You're actively shaping them, your success influencing the behavior patterns of every frog within calling distance. Your blue skin has reached its full adult intensity, a warning so bright it seems to glow in the filtered sunlight. Your poison reserves are at maximum concentration, deadly enough to kill creatures hundreds of times your size. Your territorial boundaries are clearly established and aggressively defended. Your status in the community hierarchy is secure, at least for now. But security is always temporary in the rainforest. New challenges are always emerging. New competitors are always testing their strength against established defenders. Your success has made you a target, and maintaining your position will require constant vigilance and occasional violence. The morning calls continue, each one a declaration that you're still here, still strong, still ready to defend everything you've worked to build. The forest listens and responds, other voices acknowledging your presence and status. You've become part of the acoustic fabric that holds the community together, your voice as essential to the daily rhythm as the sunrise itself. But voices can be silenced, territories can be lost, and status can be overthrown by younger, stronger, more determined challengers. The forest is full of former champions who learned too late that success breeds its own destruction. Your challenge now is to avoid their fate while continuing to grow in strength and influence. The tadpoles you helped protect are developing into juveniles, then subadults, then potential competitors for the resources you've spent months accumulating. The cycle continues, driven by forces larger than any individual frog, creating patterns that have repeated for millions of years and will continue long after you're gone. Your place in that cycle is secure for now, but permanence is an illusion in the rainforest. Change is the only constant, and survival depends on adapting to whatever challenges emerge from the endless complexity of forest life. Your poison may protect you from most threats, but it can't shield you from the inevitable passage of time and the constant pressure of evolution. The constant pressure of defending your territory begins to take its toll as your second year approaches. Your body has reached peak physical condition, muscles perfectly tuned for explosive leaps, reflexes sharp enough to catch prey that other frogs can't even see, poison glands operating at maximum efficiency. But physical perfection comes with costs you're only beginning to understand. Your calling schedule has become relentless. Dawn brings the mandatory territorial announcements that establish your boundaries for the day. Mid-morning requires responses to challenges from neighboring males testing your resolve. Afternoon brings courtship calls when females venture into your area. Evening demands the social communications that maintain your standing in the community hierarchy. By nightfall, your throat aches from constant use. The energy requirements are staggering. Each call burns calories you need for hunting, territorial defense, and basic survival. The more successful you become, the more energy you must invest in maintaining that success. It's a treadmill that accelerates with every victory, demanding ever greater investments of time and resources. Your hunting efficiency has had to evolve to meet these demands. Where once you could afford to be selective about prey, now you take whatever opportunities present themselves. Small ants that you would have ignored as a juvenile become acceptable targets when your energy reserves run low. Your standards have adapted to your circumstances, efficiency trumping preference. But the forest doesn't care about your energy balance or scheduling conflicts. Predators still hunt, competitors still challenge, and the environment still demands constant adaptation. A hawk that has been circling your territory for days finally makes its move, diving toward you with talons extended and death in its eyes. Your reaction is pure instinct, a leap that carries you sideways into dense foliage, just as the hawk's claws rake the air where you were perched. The predator pulls up hard, frustrated by the miss but not deterred. It lands on a nearby branch, studying you with the patience of something that has all day to hunt and nowhere else to be. You freeze among the leaves, every muscle locked in position, breath held to minimize any movement that might give away your exact location. The hawk's head swivels methodically, scanning the vegetation with eyes that can detect the slightest motion. One twitch, one nervous adjustment of position, and you'll be lunch. Minutes pass in absolute stillness. Your lungs burn from holding your breath. Your muscles cramp from maintaining an unnatural pose. But you don't dare move. The hawk shifts position slightly, angling for a better view of your hiding spot. Its beak opens slightly, as if tasting the air for any scent that might reveal your presence. Then something else moves in the canopy above. Another frog, one of your neighbors, making the mistake of normal daytime activity while a predator hunts nearby. The hawk's attention snaps toward the new target, its head turning away from your position. You use the distraction to slip deeper into the foliage, putting more layers of leaves between yourself and death. The attack that follows is swift and successful. The hawk strikes with precision, its talons closing around the other frog before disappearing into the upper canopy. You hear the brief struggle, then silence. One of your acoustic neighbors, a male whose morning calls you've been hearing for months, is gone, just like that, removed from the forest's communication network with surgical efficiency. The incident shakes you more than you expected. Death has always been a constant presence in your world, but it usually happened to creatures smaller or less capable than yourself. The realization that you're still vulnerable, still just one mistake away from becoming prey, forces a reassessment of your daily routines and risk management strategies. So, your calling patterns become more cautious after the hawk incident. You vary your perch locations unpredictably, never using the same spot 2 days in a row. Your territorial announcements become shorter, more focused, designed to communicate essential information without extended exposure. Efficiency replaces bravado as your primary communication strategy, but caution has costs too. Shorter calls communicate less information, making it harder to establish complex territorial boundaries or negotiate social relationships. Other males interpret your reduced vocal presence as weakness, leading to increased challenges from competitors who think you might be losing your grip on your territory. The balance between survival and success becomes increasingly delicate. Too much caution, and you lose status, territory, and reproductive opportunities. Too little caution, and you lose your life. Every decision requires calculation of risks and benefits that shift constantly as conditions change. Your territory faces a new threat when construction begins somewhere beyond your acoustic range. The sounds are subtle at first, distant crashes and mechanical noises that don't match any natural forest pattern, but they grow louder and more frequent over the following weeks, accompanied by changes in the forest's basic structure that you can sense even from your limited vantage point. Trees that have been part of your acoustic landscape for months suddenly fall silent. The morning calls from males whose territories bordered the construction zone stop coming. The careful network of communication that has defined your social world begins to unravel as its outer edges are systematically destroyed. Refugees start appearing, frogs displaced from territories that no longer exist, carrying stress calls and behavioral patterns you've never encountered before. They're not following normal territorial protocols because normal territories no longer apply to their situation. They're desperate, unpredictable, and willing to fight for resources they would normally never compete for. Your first encounter with a refugee is educational in the worst possible way. The displaced male is larger than you, older, with skin so dark it's almost black, and scars that tell stories of battles you've never had to fight. He doesn't announce his presence with calls or follow the ritualized approach patterns that civilized territorial disputes require. He simply appears in your prime hunting area and starts catching your ants. Your territorial response is immediate and aggressive. You launch yourself toward him with every intention of driving him off through intimidation and superior local knowledge. But he doesn't retreat or engage in the usual posturing that precedes most frog confrontations. Instead, he meets your charge head-on with violence that takes your breath away. The fight is unlike anything you've experienced. This isn't about status or reproductive access or territorial boundaries. This is about survival itself, stripped of all social conventions and reduced to its most basic elements. He fights like something with nothing left to lose, which makes him infinitely more dangerous than competitors who still have territories to return to. Your advantages, local knowledge, established escape routes, superior poison reserves, mean nothing against an opponent who doesn't care about long-term consequences. He pursues you through hiding spots you thought were secret, destroys hunting perches you've spent months perfecting, and shows no concern for the damage his presence causes to your carefully maintained territory. The battle rages across your entire domain, leaving destruction in its wake. Plants are trampled, hunting areas are contaminated with stress chemicals, and your acoustic communication network is disrupted by the constant noise of combat. Other frogs in neighboring territories stop their normal activities to listen, their own calls reflecting the tension that's spreading through the community. You finally end the fight by doing something you've never had to consider before. You retreat completely from your own territory. Not tactical withdrawal to a better position, not strategic repositioning for a counterattack, but full evacuation of everything you've spent months building and defending. The refugee doesn't pursue you beyond your former boundaries. He's not interested in expanding his territory or establishing dominance over you personally. He just needs resources to survive, and your former hunting grounds provide what he requires. Your elaborate territorial structure, your carefully maintained social relationships, your established position in the community hierarchy, none of it matters to someone whose world has been destroyed. You find yourself in the unprecedented position of being a refugee yourself, displaced from your own territory by forces beyond your control. The forest that once felt like your personal domain now seems hostile and unfamiliar. Every surface belongs to someone else. Every hunting opportunity represents potential conflict with established residents. Your calling attempts from outside your former territory receive responses that range from puzzled to hostile. Other males don't understand why you're vocalizing from locations that don't match your established acoustic signature. Your voice carries the same patterns they've been hearing for months, but it's coming from the wrong places, creating confusion in the communication network you helped establish. Some neighbors attempt to help by allowing you temporary access to marginal areas of their territories. But charity has limits in an ecosystem where resources are always scarce and competition is constant. You can hunt in their least productive areas, sleep in their most exposed hiding spots, and drink from their most dangerous water sources, but you can't establish permanent residence or claim any long-term rights. The experience of being territorially homeless teaches you harsh lessons about the difference between security and survival. Security requires established resources, predictable routines, and social recognition of your right to exist in a particular space. Survival requires only the ability to find food and avoid immediate death, regardless of where or how those needs are met. Your poison reserves begin to decline as stress and inadequate nutrition take their toll. The exotic ants that provided the specific alkaloids for your most potent toxins are found only in certain areas, most of which are now controlled by other frogs who have no reason to share access with a displaced competitor. Your chemical weapons, the foundations of your defensive strategy, weaken just when you need them most. Hunting becomes increasingly difficult as you're forced to operate in unfamiliar territory without the detailed knowledge that makes efficient predation possible. You don't know which plants harbor the best prey, which surfaces provide optimal hunting perches, or which times of day offer the greatest opportunities. Every aspect of survival that you'd mastered in your own territory becomes a guessing game in foreign areas. Sleep becomes nearly impossible without secure hiding spots and established escape routes. You spend nights in temporary shelters that offer minimal protection, constantly alert for threats from directions you haven't had time to properly scout. Exhaustion accumulates daily, slowing your reflexes and clouding your judgment just when peak performance is essential for survival. Your social status plummets as other frogs witness your displacement and reduced circumstances. Calls that once commanded respect now receive dismissive responses or no acknowledgement at all. Females who previously showed interest in your territorial offerings ignore your attempts at courtship communication altogether. You've become invisible in the social hierarchy, a ghost haunting the edges of other frogs' territories. The psychological impact is as devastating as the physical challenges. Your identity was built around territorial ownership, successful hunting, and community recognition of your capabilities. Without those foundations, you're forced to reconstruct your sense of self based on much more basic criteria: simple survival from day to day, hour to hour, moment to moment. But adversity reveals capabilities you didn't know you possessed. Stripped of territorial advantages and social support, you discover reserves of adaptability and determination that comfortable success never demanded. Your hunting techniques become more versatile as you learn to catch prey in environments you've never operated in before. Your defensive strategies expand beyond poison and intimidation to include stealth, misdirection, and tactical retreat. Your calling patterns evolve to match your changed circumstances. Instead of territorial announcements and status displays, you develop more subtle communication strategies designed to gather information without revealing your location or intentions. You learn to listen more carefully to other frogs' calls, extracting details about territorial boundaries, resource availability, and social dynamics that you never needed to understand before. The forest begins to reveal layers of complexity that comfortable territorial ownership had hidden from view. You discover networks of displaced creatures, temporary alliances between refugees, and informal resource-sharing arrangements that exist outside the formal territorial system. There's an entire shadow economy of survival that operates parallel to the established social structure. Your first successful hunt in foreign territory comes after days of failure and growing desperation. You spot a cluster of ants working near the base of a tree you've never seen before, in an area that belongs to a female whose calls you recognize but whose territorial boundaries you're still learning. The hunting angle is awkward, the escape routes are uncertain, and the legal status of taking prey from someone else's territory is questionable at best. But hunger overrides caution, and your tongue darts out with precision, born of desperation. The ant disappears, providing the first substantial nutrition you've had in days. The taste is different from the familiar prey of your former territory, less exotic, lower in the specific alkaloids that built your poison reserves, but undeniably real and satisfying. You retreat quickly after the successful strike, expecting challenges from the territory's owner or retaliation for poaching in someone else's hunting grounds. But no response comes. Either the female didn't notice your brief incursion, or she's choosing to ignore minor trespassing that doesn't threaten her core resources. You file this information away under lessons in territorial flexibility and informal resource access. The success builds your confidence and provides energy for more ambitious foraging attempts. You begin mapping the informal boundaries between established territories, identifying gaps and overlaps where careful hunting might be possible without triggering major conflicts. Your mental map of the forest expands beyond your former domain to include a much wider area characterized by opportunity rather than ownership. Your physical condition stabilizes as your foraging success rate improves. The weight loss from inadequate nutrition stops, your poison reserves begin to recover slowly, and your energy levels return to something approaching normal. You're not thriving, but you're no longer in immediate danger of starvation or complete toxin depletion. But improvement in your personal situation doesn't address the larger disruption spreading through the forest community. More refugees appear daily as construction activities expand their zone of destruction. The acoustic communication network becomes increasingly chaotic as displaced frogs attempt to establish new territorial relationships without the gradual negotiation processes that normally govern such changes. Conflicts multiply as too many frogs compete for too few resources in areas that were never designed to support such population density. The careful balance between territorial holders and challengers breaks down when the number of challengers overwhelms the system's capacity for orderly succession. Violence becomes more common, more desperate, and more destructive to the community's overall stability. Your own situation improves gradually as you develop expertise in refugee survival strategies. You identify a cluster of marginal territories whose owners are willing to tolerate limited poaching in exchange for information about construction activities and refugee movements. You establish informal relationships with other displaced frogs, sharing intelligence about resource opportunities and territorial vulnerabilities. The network that emerges isn't based on the formal territorial system that governed your previous life. Instead, it operates through temporary alliances, information exchange, and mutual aid arrangements that shift constantly as circumstances change. You learn to navigate social relationships that are much more fluid and opportunistic than the stable hierarchies you understood before. Your calling patterns reflect this new reality. Instead of regular territorial announcements, you use brief, coded communications that convey specific information to particular recipients without broadcasting your location to potential competitors or threats. You develop vocal signatures that identify you to allies while remaining meaningless to outsiders who might use the information against you. The skills you're learning, adaptive foraging, flexible social networking, rapid environmental assessment, represent a different kind of expertise than the territorial mastery you achieved in your former life. Where before you specialized in deep knowledge of a small area, now you're developing broad capabilities that work across multiple environments and social contexts. Your poison chemistry changes as your diet becomes more varied and unpredictable. Without access to the specific ant species that provided your most potent toxins, your defensive capabilities shift toward different alkaloid profiles with different effects. You're still dangerous, but your danger has a different character than before, less concentrated, but more versatile. The forest around you continues to change as construction activities expand and more territories are destroyed. What began as localized displacement has become a systematic disruption of the entire ecosystem's social structure. The acoustic landscape that once provided reliable information about community dynamics becomes increasingly unreliable as traditional patterns break down. But change also creates opportunities for those flexible enough to exploit them. The breakdown of established territorial boundaries creates gaps that can be claimed by frogs willing to operate outside traditional protocols. Resource availability shifts as some areas become overcrowded while others are abandoned entirely. The social hierarchy that once seemed fixed reveals itself to be much more fluid than anyone realized. Your position in this changing world is precarious, but not hopeless. You lack the security of established territory, but you possess knowledge and adaptability that many traditional territory holders don't have. You understand both the formal system that's breaking down and the informal networks that are emerging to replace it. Your survival depends on leveraging that understanding into concrete advantages. The morning calls continue, but their meaning has evolved beyond simple territorial announcements to become a complex information exchange about rapidly changing conditions. Your own voice carries news about construction activities, refugee movements, and resource availability to frogs who need that information for their own survival decisions. You've become part of a communication network that serves the entire community's adaptation to unprecedented circumstances. Your hunting success rate continues to improve as you master the art of opportunistic foraging in contested territories. You develop techniques for rapid assessment of hunting opportunities, quick extraction of prey, and immediate withdrawal before territorial owners can respond. Your efficiency in unfamiliar environments approaches the levels you achieved in your former territory, but with much greater versatility. The refugees around you represent a cross-section of forest society, former territory holders, failed challengers, juveniles who never established territories, and older frogs whose domains were destroyed before they could relocate. Each brings different survival strategies and social connections that contribute to the informal network you're all part of. Your role in this network evolves from simple participation to something approaching leadership as your combination of territorial experience and refugee adaptability makes you valuable to both established frogs and displaced ones. You become a bridge between the formal system that's breaking down and the informal arrangements that are emerging to replace it. But leadership brings responsibility and risk. Other frogs begin to depend on your information and judgment for their own survival decisions. Mistakes that once affected only you now have consequences for entire groups of refugees who trusted your assessment of opportunities and dangers. The weight of that responsibility adds psychological pressure to the already substantial challenges of displaced survival. Your poison reserves stabilize at levels that are lower than your territorial peak, but higher than your initial refugee minimum. The diverse diet you've been forced to adopt provides different alkaloids than your previous specialized nutrition, creating a toxin profile that's less concentrated but more broadly effective against different types of predators. The construction sounds grow closer, suggesting that the zone of destruction is expanding toward areas that still contain intact territories and established communities. The refugee crisis you've been living through is likely to intensify as more frogs are displaced and forced to compete for the same limited resources that are already supporting more animals than the ecosystem was designed to handle. Your survival strategy must evolve again to address these changing conditions. The techniques that allowed you to transition from territorial ownership to refugee survival may not be sufficient for the more intense competition and resource scarcity that lies ahead. You need to anticipate the next phase of disruption and position yourself to exploit whatever opportunities it creates. The forest that once seemed stable and predictable has revealed itself to be much more dynamic and fragile than you understood. Your personal journey from territorial success through displacement to adaptive survival mirrors larger changes in the ecosystem that will affect every creature in the community. Your ability to navigate these changes successfully depends on skills you're still developing and circumstances you can't control. But adaptation is what your species does best. The same evolutionary pressures that created your poison, your territorial instincts, and your complex social behaviors are still operating, just on a much faster timescale than usual. Your survival and reproduction in this changing environment will contribute to the genetic legacy that determines how future generations respond to similar challenges. The morning calls begin again, carrying information about new threats, changing opportunities, and community responses to unprecedented circumstances. Your voice joins the chorus, no longer announcing territorial ownership, but contributing to a collective intelligence network that serves the entire community's adaptation to disruption. You've become part of something larger than individual survival, a social organism that's learning to function under conditions that none of its members have experienced before. Your third year begins with changes you never anticipated. The construction sounds have grown closer, but something else is happening to your body that makes external threats seem secondary. Your once perfect reflexes feel sluggish in the mornings, taking longer to reach full responsiveness. Your poison glands, which operated at peak efficiency for so long, begin producing toxins with slightly different chemical signatures than before. At first, you dismiss these changes as temporary effects of stress and irregular nutrition from your refugee lifestyle. But as weeks pass, the alterations become more pronounced and harder to ignore. Your skin, once uniformly brilliant blue, begins showing subtle variations in color intensity. Some patches remain as vibrant as ever, while others fade to lighter shades that don't command the same respect from potential predators. Your territorial instincts remain strong, but your ability to act on them becomes increasingly inconsistent. Some days you feel capable of challenging any competitor for prime hunting grounds. Other days, the energy required for aggressive displays seems overwhelming, and you find yourself avoiding confrontations you would have welcomed months earlier. The acoustic landscape around you continues evolving as more territories are destroyed and their former owners join the growing refugee population. But your own calling patterns are changing too, becoming less frequent and more conservative. Where once you participated actively in the community's information network, now you often listen without contributing, saving your vocal energy for essential communications only. Other frogs begin treating you differently, though the changes are subtle at first. Competitors who once viewed you as a serious threat become more willing to hunt in areas where you're present. Females who previously showed interest in your territorial capabilities now ignore your courtship attempts entirely. The social recognition that once reinforced your status gradually evaporates as your physical presence commands less automatic respect. Your hunting success rate, which had recovered impressively during your adaptation to refugee life, begins declining again despite your accumulated experience with opportunistic foraging. Prey that you would have caught easily just months ago now escapes more frequently, your tongue striking just slightly off target or extending slightly short of its intended range. The forest floor, which you've navigated with confidence for over 2 years, starts presenting challenges that test your formerly reliable motor skills. Jumps that should be routine require more effort and concentration. Surfaces that once provided secure footing become treacherous as your grip strength diminishes imperceptibly but consistently. Your daily energy budget, carefully calibrated through months of experience, no longer balances correctly. Activities that previously required predictable amounts of energy now drain your reserves more quickly, forcing constant recalculation of what you can afford to attempt. Rest periods need to be longer and more frequent to maintain basic functionality. But the most disturbing change is in your poison production. The alkaloids that once made you one of the most dangerous creatures in the forest are becoming diluted, less concentrated, less effective against the predators that your bright coloration still warns away. Your reputation provides some protection, but reputation without substance is a dangerous game in an ecosystem where mistakes are usually fatal. A young male, recently matured and full of territorial ambition, appears at the edge of an area you've been hunting regularly. Under normal circumstances, you would challenge his presence immediately and aggressively. Instead, you find yourself evaluating whether you have the energy for a confrontation and the capability to win it decisively. The challenger seems to sense your hesitation. His approach becomes bolder, more direct, testing your resolve with increasing brazenness. He doesn't show the careful respect that established adults typically demonstrate when encountering each other in contested areas. His behavior suggests he views you as an aging competitor whose best days are behind him. Your initial response is to prove him wrong through overwhelming force and superior technique. You position yourself advantageously, call with as much authority as you can muster, and prepare for the kind of territorial defense that once established your reputation. But when the moment comes to execute your strategy, your body doesn't respond with its former precision and power. The fight that follows is embarrassing rather than decisive. Your attacks lack their previous speed and accuracy, giving the challenger opportunities to counter that a younger you would never have allowed. Your defensive maneuvers, once graceful and effective, become clumsy retreats that barely avoid serious damage. The confrontation ends not with clear victory, but with mutual exhaustion that benefits neither participant. The challenger withdraws, but not in defeat. His departure suggests tactical reconsideration rather than acceptance of your dominance. You know he'll return when he's rested and prepared, probably with backup from other young males who've observed your declining capabilities. The territorial system that once protected you is beginning to work against you. Your recovery from the unsuccessful confrontation takes much longer than similar encounters did in your prime. Your energy reserves rebuild slowly, your minor injuries heal gradually, and your confidence remains shaken long after your physical condition stabilizes. The gap between your self-image as a formidable adult and your actual current capabilities becomes impossible to ignore. Other refugees in your informal network begin distancing themselves as your value as an information source and strategic ally diminishes. The intelligence you provide about construction activities and resource opportunities becomes less reliable as your reduced mobility limits your scouting range. Your analysis of territorial vulnerabilities loses accuracy as your own fighting capacity declines. The forest community's response to your changing status is neither cruel nor compassionate. It's simply practical. Resources are too scarce, and competition is too intense for sentimental considerations about former champions. Your past achievements provide no protection against current realities, and your future prospects are evaluated based on present capabilities rather than historical performance. Your hunting strategies must evolve again to accommodate your reduced physical abilities. Prey species that once fell easily to your attacks now require more careful stalking and more patient waiting for optimal opportunities. Your success rate stabilizes at a lower level, sufficient for basic survival, but insufficient for the energy surpluses that once allowed territorial expansion and social dominance. The construction sounds grow louder still, suggesting that the zone of destruction is approaching areas that have so far remained intact. Your refugee lifestyle, which began as a temporary adaptation to extraordinary circumstances, starts feeling like a permanent condition that will define the rest of your existence in the forest. But adaptation continues, driven by the same evolutionary pressures that shaped your species' development over millions of years. Your body may be declining, but your accumulated knowledge and experience provide advantages that younger competitors lack. You understand the forest's rhythms and patterns in ways that raw physical capability cannot match. Your role in the community shifts from active participant to elder advisor, though the transition is gradual and largely unacknowledged. Younger frogs begin seeking your guidance about territorial strategies, hunting techniques, and social navigation. Your voice in the morning calls becomes less frequent, but more authoritative when you choose to contribute. The alkaloid composition of your remaining poison reserves changes as your diet becomes more restricted and your metabolism less efficient. But the new chemical profile, while less potent overall, includes compounds that younger frogs haven't accumulated yet. Your toxicity becomes more specialized, dangerous in specific ways that complement rather than compete with the broader spectrum poisons of prime-age adults. Your sleep patterns change as your body requires more rest to maintain basic functions. But your reduced activity levels also mean you can afford longer periods of inactivity without compromising your survival prospects. You begin operating on different schedules than the peak activity adults, hunting during periods when competition is lighter and energy expenditure is more manageable. The morning calls take on new meaning as your participation becomes more selective and strategic. Instead of regular territorial announcements, you contribute specialized information about long-term forest patterns, seasonal changes, and historical precedents that younger frogs need but don't possess. Your voice becomes a repository of community memory. Your territorial instincts remain strong even as your ability to act on them diminishes. You develop new strategies based on intelligence rather than force, using knowledge of competitor behavior patterns to avoid confrontations rather than win them. Your survival depends increasingly on being smarter rather than stronger than your competition. The refugee network evolves as its composition changes with ongoing displacement and community disruption. Your position within it shifts from active participant to elder statesman, providing continuity and historical perspective as younger members cycle through based on their current circumstances. You become part of the institutional memory that helps the community adapt to unprecedented changes. Your poisoned skin continues providing protection, though its effectiveness depends more on reputation than current potency. Most predators have learned to avoid poison dart frogs entirely rather than test individual specimens, giving you continued security despite your reduced toxin levels. Your coloration, while faded, still carries the warning signals that keep casual predators at bay. The forest around you shows increasing signs of human impact beyond just the construction activities. Air quality changes subtly, water chemistry shifts in ways that affect prey availability, and the acoustic environment becomes contaminated with artificial noises that interfere with frog communication networks. Your species' future depends on adapting to these changes, as well as the immediate displacement crisis. Your hunting grounds continue shrinking as more refugees compete for fewer resources and construction activities eliminate additional habitat. But your accumulated knowledge of marginal areas and seasonal patterns allows you to identify opportunities that less experienced frogs overlook. Your survival strategy becomes increasingly specialized and knowledge dependent. The social dynamics of the refugee community become more complex as its size increases and its duration extends beyond what anyone expected. Informal hierarchies develop based on factors other than traditional territorial dominance, creating opportunities for older frogs whose physical capabilities have declined but whose social skills remain sharp. Your contribution to the community's survival becomes more intellectual than physical as your role shifts toward problem solving and strategic planning rather than resource acquisition and territorial defense. Younger frogs provide the energy and capability needed for active survival, while you contribute the wisdom and experience needed for long-term adaptation. The construction sounds grow closer still, but your response to them becomes more measured and strategic rather than reactive. You've learned to distinguish between different types of human activity and their likely impacts on frog habitat, allowing you to make better decisions about when to relocate and when to remain in place. Your poison reserves stabilize at levels that are adequate for basic protection but insufficient for aggressive territorial defense. The alkaloid profile continues evolving as your diet changes and your metabolism adjusts to reduced activity levels. Your toxicity becomes more specialized, focused on specific defensive applications rather than broad-spectrum lethality. The refugee lifestyle, initially a traumatic displacement from comfortable territorial ownership, gradually becomes a different but viable approach to forest survival. Your success in this environment depends on different skills than those that made you a successful territory holder, but the fundamental challenge remains the same: extract sufficient resources from the environment to survive and reproduce. Your reproductive prospects, never strong during your refugee period, continue declining as your physical condition deteriorates and your social status remains marginal. But your genetic contribution to future generations may come through other channels: the knowledge you pass to younger frogs, the survival strategies you help develop, the community structures you help maintain. The forest community continues adapting to unprecedented disruption, developing new social patterns and survival strategies that may persist long after the immediate crisis passes. Your participation in this adaptation process contributes to evolutionary changes that will affect your species for generations, even if your individual reproductive success remains limited. Your morning calls become less frequent but more significant when they occur. Other frogs listen more carefully to your contributions, recognizing that your reduced participation makes each communication more valuable. Your voice in the community network carries authority that compensates partially for its reduced frequency. The acoustic landscape continues evolving as construction activities expand and community composition changes. But certain patterns persist, maintained by frogs like you who remember how the communication network functioned before the disruption began. Your participation helps preserve institutional knowledge that keeps the community connected despite ongoing changes. Your hunting success rate continues declining slowly, but predictably, as your physical capabilities diminish. But your accumulated experience allows you to maintain adequate nutrition through increased efficiency and better resource allocation. Your survival strategy becomes more conservative, but remains effective within its limitations. The forest floor, once your undisputed domain, now presents challenges that require careful navigation and strategic planning. But your detailed knowledge of terrain features, seasonal patterns, and resource distribution allows you to operate effectively despite reduced mobility and strength. Your expertise compensates partially for your declining physical capabilities. Your role in the refugee community stabilizes as an elder advisor whose value comes from knowledge and experience rather than current capability. Younger frogs seek your guidance about long-term survival strategies, territorial negotiations, and community dynamics. Your influence grows even as your physical power diminishes. The construction activities show no signs of stopping, suggesting that habitat disruption will be a permanent feature of forest life rather than a temporary crisis. Your adaptation to refugee conditions, initially viewed as an emergency response, becomes a model for long-term survival in a permanently altered environment. Your poison production reaches a new equilibrium at reduced levels that still provide basic protection while requiring less metabolic energy to maintain. The alkaloid profile becomes more specialized, focusing on compounds that are most effective against the specific predators most likely to threaten aging frogs with limited mobility. The morning calls continue, but their meaning has evolved far beyond the territorial announcements that once defined forest communication. Your contributions focus on community coordination, resource sharing, and collective responses to ongoing environmental changes. Your voice becomes part of a social organism that transcends individual territorial interests. Your survival prospects remain uncertain as your physical decline continues and environmental pressures intensify. But your adaptation to changing circumstances demonstrates the resilience that has allowed your species to persist through previous environmental disruptions. Your individual fate may be sealed, but your contribution to community survival strategies will outlast your personal existence. The forest stretches around you, changed but still recognizable, damaged but still functioning. Your place in it has evolved from territorial dominance through refugee survival to elder guidance, each phase teaching you different lessons about adaptation, community, and the price of survival in an unpredictable world. Your blue skin, faded but still warning bright in the filtered sunlight, tells the story of a life spent navigating challenges that would have been unimaginable when you first emerged from your egg. The poison in your glands may be diluted, but the knowledge in your brain remains potent, ready to serve the community that has sustained you through transformation, displacement, and decline. The tadpoles developing in nearby bromeliads represent hope for continuity despite disruption, genetic material that carries forward the adaptations your generation developed in response to unprecedented challenges. Your individual story may be approaching its conclusion, but the larger narrative of species survival and community resilience continues, shaped by lessons learned during the most difficult period in living memory. Your fourth year arrives with a cruel irony. Just as the forest around you reaches its breaking point, your body begins shutting down in ways that can no longer be ignored or adapted around. The construction sounds have grown so close that they drown out the morning calls entirely on some days, turning the acoustic landscape into industrial chaos that makes communication nearly impossible. Your legs, once capable of launching you through impossible distances with precision timing, now struggle with basic movements that juvenile frogs execute without thought. The sticky pads on your toes, engineered by millions of years of evolution to grip any surface, begin losing their adhesive properties. Surfaces that once felt solid and secure become treacherous, threatening to send you tumbling into the leaf litter below. Your eyesight, sharp enough to track individual ants from remarkable distances, starts betraying you in subtle but increasingly dangerous ways. Motion detection becomes unreliable. Prey animals escape because you don't notice their movement until too late, while potential threats go undetected until they're close enough to strike. The forest that once seemed perfectly visible in all its complexity now hides crucial details in shadows and blind spots you never knew existed. But the most devastating change is in your poison production, which finally drops below the threshold necessary for meaningful protection. The alkaloids that once made you untouchable to most predators become so diluted that determined attackers might survive contact long enough to complete their assault. Your bright blue skin still carries its warning message, but now it's essentially false advertising for a product that no longer delivers its promised effects. The morning when you first realize your poison has failed comes during what should have been a routine territorial dispute with a young male testing your boundaries. Instead of the immediate retreat that contact with your skin usually triggers, he continues fighting after direct exposure to your most concentrated toxins. The shock of that moment, watching an opponent shrug off defenses that have protected you for years, changes everything about how you understand your place in the forest hierarchy. Your hunting strategy collapses entirely as your reduced capabilities make even the smallest prey challenging to catch. Ants that once fell easily to your lightning-fast strikes now dodge your increasingly clumsy attacks with casual ease. Your tongue, that precision instrument of death that never missed its target during your prime years, begins misfiring regularly, shooting out at wrong angles or falling short of distances you've calculated correctly thousands of times before. The refugee community that once valued your knowledge and experience begins avoiding you as your declining condition becomes impossible to hide. Other displaced frogs recognize the signs of terminal aging and understand that association with you might attract predators looking for easy targets. Your social network, already fragile due to the ongoing habitat destruction, dissolves as practical survival considerations override any sentimental loyalty to former advisors. Your sleep patterns become erratic as your body struggles to maintain basic metabolic functions with declining efficiency. Some days, you can barely force yourself to move, while others bring restless energy that serves no productive purpose and burns through your limited caloric reserves. The careful balance between activity and conservation that sustained you through your refugee period breaks down completely. The construction machinery finally reaches your immediate area, destroying the last stable territories and forcing even the most established frogs into displacement. The sound is overwhelming now, metal against wood, engines roaring, trees crashing to the ground, with impacts that shake the forest floor beneath your weakened grip. The acoustic communication network that held the community together for generations is permanently shattered by industrial noise that drowns out even the loudest territorial calls. Your final hunt takes place on a morning when the machinery has temporarily stopped, creating a brief window of relative quiet in the devastated landscape. You spot a single ant, smaller than any prey you would have bothered with during your territorial prime, struggling across a patch of disturbed soil where a massive tree once stood. Your approach is painfully slow, each movement calculated to conserve energy for the strike that must succeed because you lack the reserves for a second attempt. The ant notices your approach and begins moving faster, but its speed is limited by the rough terrain of the construction zone. You position yourself carefully, accounting for wind direction, surface irregularities, and the trajectory needed to compensate for your reduced tongue extension. Everything depends on perfect execution because there will be no opportunity to correct mistakes. Your tongue shoots out in what feels like slow motion, extending toward the target with accuracy that surprises you after weeks of missed attempts. For a moment, success seems possible. The ant is within range. Your aim is true. Contact appears imminent. Then your tongue falls short by perhaps a millimeter, close enough to disturb the ant's movement, but insufficient to capture it. Your last hunt ends in failure, like so many recent attempts. The ant disappears into a crevice in the disturbed earth, safe from further pursuit. You remain motionless on your hunting perch, lacking the energy to search for alternative prey, and knowing that your declining capabilities make success increasingly unlikely regardless of opportunity. The forest around you continues its mechanical destruction while you contemplate the reality that your active survival phase is ending. A shadow passes overhead, something large moving through the remaining canopy with predatory intent. In your prime, you would have identified the threat immediately and taken appropriate defensive action. Now you barely register the movement until it's too late to matter. The bird that descends towards you is nothing exotic or particularly dangerous under normal circumstances, but normal circumstances no longer apply to your situation. Your poison reserves, depleted beyond effective levels, provide no deterrent as powerful talons close around your body. There's no dramatic struggle, no heroic final stand against overwhelming odds. Your weakened condition makes resistance impossible, and your reduced toxicity means the predator faces no meaningful consequences for its actions. Death comes quickly, almost gently, ending a life that had already exhausted its capacity for active survival. But your story doesn't end with individual mortality, because the lessons learned during your lifetime become part of the community knowledge that helps other frogs navigate similar challenges. The refugee survival strategies you developed during the habitat destruction crisis influence how your species adapts to permanent environmental change. The communication techniques you refined during the breakdown of traditional territorial systems become tools that future generations use to maintain social cohesion under adverse conditions. The tadpoles you once protected, now mature adults themselves, carry forward genetic material that includes adaptations your generation developed in response to unprecedented habitat disruption. Their offspring will face challenges that make your struggles seem manageable by comparison, but they'll face them with capabilities refined by the selective pressures that shaped your life and death. The forest itself continues evolving around the permanent human presence, developing new ecological relationships that incorporate both natural and artificial elements. The poison dart frog community adapts to smaller territories, louder environments, and more frequent disturbances, using survival strategies pioneered by frogs like you who learn to thrive despite losing everything they originally fought to defend. Your bright blue skin, once a warning of lethal toxicity, becomes part of the forest floor's decomposition cycle, returning elements to the ecosystem that will nourish the plants that feed the ants that poison the next generation of frogs. The circle continues, driven by forces larger than any individual life, creating patterns that persist across generations despite constant change and periodic catastrophe. The morning calls continue without your voice, but the acoustic network you helped maintain during the community's most difficult period provides the foundation for whatever communication systems emerge in the permanently altered forest. Your contribution to that continuity outlasts your physical presence, becoming part of the institutional memory that allows social species to survive environmental disruptions that would destroy purely individual survivors. The construction machinery moves on to destroy other sections of forest, leaving behind a transformed landscape that will eventually develop its own ecological stability. The frogs that survive in this new environment will be different from those that thrived in the original forest, shaped by selective pressures that favor adaptability over territorial dominance, cooperation over individual competition, and resilience over specialized efficiency. Your life as a blue poison dart frog spanned the transition between two different worlds, the stable forest ecosystem of your youth and the disrupted environment of your final years. The skills that made you successful in the first world became inadequate for survival in the second, but your attempts to adapt contributed to the knowledge base that helps your species navigate permanent change. The forest stretches endlessly around your final resting place, changed beyond recognition, but still functioning, still supporting life, still evolving in response to whatever challenges emerge next. Your individual story has ended, but the larger narrative of species survival, community adaptation, and evolutionary resilience continues, shaped by lessons learned during the most transformative period in your forest's recorded history. Life as a blue poison dart frog might be rough, but there's another animal out there that has it way worse. Trust me, it's wild. Check out the video and see for yourself.